Hello, this is RJ Podesky, and today we're going to be doing the Chapter 5 project that integrates Android lists, arrays, and launches a web browser from our app that we're going to build. And we're going to start by building a new Android Studio project as we have in the past, and this is going to be a city guide to launch either both images or a web browser, also using either lists, arrays, and also integrating switch statement as well. And so we'll call this again City Guide and API 15 Android 4.0.3 Ice Cream Sandwich. And we will select an empty activity to get started. And we'll name that main activity. And we will go ahead and click Finish and let Android Studio build out the defaults for the app. Once our default app is up and ready, we're going to delete our Hello World text here that's there by default. So just tap the delete key there, and we want to make sure that our build device is going to be Nexus 5. And the next thing I'm going to do is go to our main activity.java. I like to show my line numbers, and things look okay here. I'm going to now add a image icon to the launcher. So we'll begin by adding a new image asset. And we will select an image as opposed to clip art. And then I'm going to browse to the location on my laptop where an icon of the cityscape of Chicago is located. And when I get to my files, I'm going to select IC Launcher Chicago.png, click OK, and we'll trim these up a little bit as well. And then we'll click the next button and finish, as this creates all of our different resolutions. Now I'm going to change the behavior of our app by going into our main activity.java, and instead of our main activity extending app compat activity, we're going to change that to list activity. And it's likely we'll have to use Alt-Enter to import that class, which we have. And then we're going to delete our set content view r.layout.activity main, and we'll save our project. The next thing we're going to do is insert some code that's going to declare our array type for our different attractions within our city guide application. Art Institute of Chicago. And we need to put these in double quotes. Magnificent Mile, Willis Tower, although it's still Sears Tower to me. Navy Pier, and Water Tower. And I like to space out my code just a little bit here so it's a little cleaner. And we'll terminate that with a semicolon at the end. Now that we have our array created, we need to use what's called set list adapter to make sure that we can display our values from our array. And this is going to be of type string. So we're going to see and do a short test here now that we have this established for our array and displaying the array, and we want to see if that list actually displays before we move any further. So from here I'm going to go ahead and run the app and select our emulator and make sure this does what it's supposed to here first. So we're going to let this generate and build the emulator and launch the app in test mode. Our emulator is loaded and we can see that we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. There's the same 5 items that were in our array from earlier. So our first test looks good, and now we're going to go through and probably change our styles and start to add some images in here. So I'm going to close out of my emulator and get back to Android Studio. I'm going to change the theme now and go to Res and Values and go to styles.xml, and we're now going to change this from theme.appcompat.light.dark action bar, and we're going to change that to theme.appcompat, and we'll save our changes there. And you can see we now have a black background or a dark gray background here instead after we made those changes. We're now going to insert some images into our drawable folder from, so we've got some images to go along with our city guide application. So I'm going to grab iclauncher.png, going to grab Pier, Mountain, and Willis. And we're going to copy those, and then we're going to paste them inside of our drawable folder, where we will right click and then paste and select OK. And we should have IC Launcher Chicago and Pier, Water, and Willis in there for us. We're going to open up our strings.xml file now and add some values there. We'll still go ahead and use the link editor. And our first one's going to be Willis. We'll call this Willis Tower image. We're going to create one as well for our Navy Pier image. And one for our Water Tower image. I'm going to go ahead and save this and close our translations editor and our strings.xml file. We're now going to create a custom XML layout for our list view, and to do that we're going to start by opening up our activity main.xml file, which is located in the layout folder. Which we just need to click on the text tab here at the bottom, and that'll change our layout view into text view. And we're going to go here slightly, just one line above. I'm going to right click and show line numbers. I'm going to go just below, just above our relative layout in tag, and I'm going to type in text view. and that's going to automatically create an end tag for me. And then I'm going to add specific properties for that text view that specifies each layout. I'm going to go ahead and continue to add some additional properties here. Now that I have my text view custom layout built here for my IC Launcher Chicago, I'm now going to modify my set list adapter and change this from what we had earlier, and now it's going to be this comma Android, now it's going to be this comma r dot layout dot activity main comma r dot id dot travel comma and then attraction. So what this does is this adds the custom layout named activity main.xml to our set list adapters. Those properties can be used when displaying our list. So I'm going to run the app again, and we're going to see what changes this has effect on our application and see the differences. And we can now see that that layout is applied to our app for all of our items in our array, and that icon is showing next to all of them. So the next step is going to be to start coding what actually happens when we tap on those items in the list. So everything looks good here right now. I'm going to go ahead and close out of my emulator. And we are going to create a new method inside of our main activity.xml. We're going to do it after our onCreate method. On list item click list view, and this is a lowercase l, not a number 1. Then we have a close parentheses and an open brace, and our closed brace gets put there automatically for us. We will have to come up here and resolve some references by doing alt-enter and importing these classes. And we'll save our work. I do like to save frequently. Alright, we're now going to set up a switch statement that works like a case if you used those before. But it looks like an extended if, that if we're going to have too many if statements, we can use a switch to select which one of these cases to execute, if you will. So we're going to go ahead and set this up for our 4 cases in our switch statement to apply to each of the 4 items we have in our array. Go ahead and save. So our first 2 activities, our first one is for the Art Institute of Chicago. We are going to start an activity, and this is going to be a new intent, and the intent is going to be something called action view, and we will do a URI.parse to tell the application to open up a web browser and go to http://artic.edu. And then you should see 3 parentheses afterwards and a semicolon. We will need to Alt-Enter to import the URI class. We're going to do something similar for our case 1. And here we're going to use the same syntax, and this time we're going to open up the magnificentmile.com. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and test and make sure that both of these work properly. So I'm going to go ahead and run the app for my Nexus 5 and kick on my emulator and see how this works. Once our emulator is loaded, we're going to test our Art Institute of Chicago list item by clicking on it. And you can see that it'll prompt us whether we want to open with Chrome or WebView browser tester. Select just once. I have to admit I had trouble with the web browser application tester, so I went back and did this with Chrome instead, and you can see that the m.artic.edu site is loading through the emulator here and should be coming up here in just a moment. And you can see here where the mobile.Art Institute of Chicago website is loaded, and it looks like our app is working the way we want it to. So I'm now going to close out of the emulator now that I've verified that. Click on Run to clear up some real estate here on my screen. Make sure everything's saved, and then we're going to add multiple class files here for both our Willis Tower, Navy Pier, and Water Tower images to load. So under the Android bootcamp.cityguide folder, we are going to right-click and do a new Java class. Pardon me, we're going to do a new activity, and we're going to make that an empty activity. And our activity name is going to be Willis, and we'll let this continue to be Activity Willis, and we will click Finish. And under our activity willis.xml, under Design View, and we're going to do the same thing here and create blank activities again. And we are going to do that for Navy Pier. And we'll let this be called pier.java and activity underscore pier.xml for our layout name. So we've created that, and we're going to create one more empty activity for Water Tower. So now I have 4 files underneath my net.androidbootcamp.cityguide, our main activity, one for Navy Pier, one for Water Tower, and one for Willis Tower, or still Sears Tower in my mind. And now we will go design the XML layout files for each of these. So we will go to our activity willis.xml. We don't have a hello world here to delete, so we don't have to worry about that. And under our widgets category, under palette, which we will scroll down to, we will drag the image view control onto our palette. And we'll let that drop itself there. And when our resources come up, we're going to select Willis Tower, and it fills that in automatically for us. We're going to call this IMG Willis. And for our content description, we need to define this, what we set earlier in our strings.xml file, to be Willis, so that for accessibility reasons, if someone could not view this image, the screen reader would read it to them. So we'll make sure we do that, and we'll go ahead and save. And we're going to close the activity willis.xml, and now we're going to go to activity_peer, and we will repeat the process so that our image view control gets dropped on here. We select Navy Peer. Get that to fill the whole piece there. Call this image peer, and in our content description, we'll select peer for our accessibility purposes. We will save, and we will close. And I'm also going to close peer.java. And under our water tower file, we will do the same thing. And we'll get that so it fills more of the full screen. Call this IMG water, and our content description will be water tower image, and we will save, and we will close that along with water.java and willis.java. We're now going to go back to our main activity.java, and we're going to add our activities for our new Java classes, so it executes those Java classes instead of the web browser intents. So this will still be a new intent though, but the intent is going to be main activity.this, and it will open willis.class. And we will repeat this for both our case 3 and case 4, only instead of willis.class, this will be peer.class and water.class. After I have that, I will save my files. And it looks like I need 2 parentheses to close out both those arguments there. And now we're ready to test our application and run this in the emulator again. Let's see how things look. Our emulator has loaded the app for us, and now we're going to test the Willis Tower option. And we see that that opens up the Willis Tower image. I can use the back button. I can look at Navy Pier. I can back up. I can view Water Tower. I can back up again. And I can load Magnificent Mile with Chrome as well. in my application. And you can see that the magnificentmile.com website is loading here in Chrome for us. And I'll go ahead and back up to my main screen. And again, so we've got our images that load as 3 examples here in different class files, 2 examples here where they load in a alternate web browser like Chrome, using lists, arrays, and integrating with web browsers. So this concludes the Chapter 5 project in building the City Guide Android application. So thanks so much.